Welcome to Three Count Commentaries. Today we're going to talk about MJF and his Players Circle, whatever. What is that? Players Tribune article? Let's talk about that. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's incredibly long and boring. But we are going to look at some of the parts where he's sneak dissing people, talking about being a Jew again. If you didn't know he's a Jew, he ain't talked about it enough. And some of the other little tidbits in here that I found interesting. Are you ready to go? All right, let's start with some sneak dissing. So he sneak disses a couple of times in this article, and we're going to talk about both of them before we move on to other subjects. So he says this: AEW isn't for everyone. Sink or swim, cuts both ways like an MFer. If you watched us in year one, you know that. I won't name any names, but suffice to say, there were guys who had all the buzz in the world coming in at the start, and it turns out it was just that. Buzz. Seriously. There were guys who no one could shut up about. Oh my God, so-and-so. That dude is a massive star. You'd hear someone mention Darby Allin and it's like, yeah, Darby's cool and all, but he's little. He's not really going to get over. You know who the guy is? It's so-and-so. And I sit here and I read through the entire thing. I skimmed most of it, but I read through it. MJF put over the Young Bucks. He put over Kenny Omega. He put over Chris Jericho. He put over Jon Moxley. He put over Bryan Danielson. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, who could he possibly be talking about from somebody from year one that came in with a lot of buzz, failed to get over, and it failed to work out. And I'm trying to figure out who it is because I don't know who it is. I don't know that much about the AEW roster at the beginning. I know everybody essentially came in with some measure of buzz because according to the people who like AEW, everybody on the show was great. Everybody was awesome. Everybody was amazing. They didn't say, oh, you know, so-and-so was pretty good. Everybody was the best in the world or one of the best in the world, and you couldn't tell them anything different. Even when you saw mid right in your face, they was like, well, he's great on the indies. So being great on the indies, which I guess was one of the guys in question, was Joey Janela. Now, that became the sticking point with me because I know Joey Janela was one of the bigger indie wrestlers in the business when he was signed. I don't know if everybody had high expectations for him, but he was one of the bigger indie stars at the time. I don't know if people thought he was going to be a bigger star than Darby Allin. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of that 2019 roster, and I'm not really thinking about a lot of people or seeing a lot of people who this could actually apply to. I mean, if you go look at the roster for several of their pay-per-views, the roster is just full of bums. Sonny Kiss, the Best Friends, Butcher and the Blade. You know, like, there's not a lot of people where you would have thought from the very beginning these people are going to be hot, except the people that he puts over in the later part of the article, which is like Jon Moxley, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, etc., Chris Jericho. He puts over all of those guys. Nobody thought Sonny Kiss was going to be a huge star. Nobody thought Brandon Cutler and Michael Nakazawa were going to be a huge star. What is he talking about? Shawn Spears, maybe? Is he talking about Shawn Spears? Maybe it's Shawn Spears or Joey Janela. You know, I know Shawn Spears did get a nice little push coming out because he was Ty Dillinger in WWE. Maybe that's it. Is it that? Is it Shawn Spears? Is it Pac? Who is another one who I guess people thought, I don't think people believed he was going to be a huge star. Like, I don't know who this will apply to. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, he teases saying names and everything, but I'm not sure who that applies to. Now, later in the article, he says, someone like Bryan, he's a blueprint for coming in later and doing the same. I guess, you know, doing the work or whatever. But this won't shock you. Not everyone has been like them. Other established dudes came in, thought of us as a parachute between forgettable WWE runs, and didn't respect what this was built on, or who it was built by, or why it was built in the first place. And while it would be so fun to write a few names down right now, what's even more fun is I really don't have to. Because guys like that, their laziness comes out in the wash. It shows up in the fucking work. Doesn't mean they're bad people. I just don't respect them. They never understood what Mox or Jericho or Danielson understood, or what the Elite understood, which is that the core of AEW's success came from two places. One, our fans. Two, the originals. So now we're talking about somebody who came in later, who is lazy, basically washed out. So I'm trying to figure out who that could be. Now there could be several people in AEW who came in later and didn't live up to their potential. You got Andrade, you got Miro, you got Jack Swagger, who is pretty obvious. You got Claudio. You got a couple of people who've come in over the last 3 or 4 years. Now, perhaps he's talking about Bobby Fish, but Bobby Fish hasn't gone back to WWE, and it's possible he could be talking about Bobby Fish, but Bobby Fish isn't the kind of guy I would think too much about. What about a guy like Leo Rush? Leo Rush came into AEW. He was there for a short amount of time, then he was gone. I'm trying to think of some guys who it could possibly be who are no longer there. I would imagine they're no longer there. I would really cringe at the idea of him talking about people who are currently still on the roster. Could he possibly be talking about like the Hardy Boys? Could it be, possible that he could be talking about, well, I know the Hardy Boys are still on the roster technically. So, why would he be talking about them? And those guys are complaining that they want to do more on the roster, not that they want to do less. Now, we do know that some of the guys, I think Pac has been terminally injured like over and over and over again, but a lot of Miro has been a healthy scratch for a long time. So is Malachi Black, so is Andrade. They just kind of sat at home and did nothing. But that, again, that's Tony Khan's fault, because he could have just cut them if they didn't want to work. Or he could have, pushed them in a way that would have kept them relevant on the television show. And therefore, maybe they would have worked a little bit harder, especially considering the talent that they were pushing. But here is my idea here. This is what I'm thinking about. It seems to me that some people came from WWE to AEW, and they treated AEW like a regular business. While a lot of the originals and he talks a lot about being an AEW original and how he's proud of that. But a lot of those guys treat it like it's a cult, and they're a priesthood. We were here from the beginning. We laid the foundation. It's like, so what? His entire tirade about being an AEW original just kind of left me like, so what? You were here from 2019. So what? MJF himself, his story is that he wasn't really supposed to be there. Cody gave him a chance, and it was through the generosity of Cody and Tony Khan that he was able to climb from being a indie wrestler to being what he is now, which is great. But ultimately, I don't care about you being an original. That literally doesn't mean anything. There's a ton of people who are on that roster who had no business being signed to a professional wrestling contract in 2019. So many of them that just go look at the cards for their first few pay-per-view events. Just go look at that stuff and ask yourself, how much money would you be willing to spend to see some of those people? They had no business being there. None. But, we're supposed to treat them like they're some kind of exalted class. Now, there are some people that I would say that were there from the beginning in terms of the originals, where you want to give them a tremendous amount of credit. For starters, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. I'm not a big fan of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, but they were the guys who started the company. He really kind of tips his hat to them for that. Chris Jericho, same reason. He, could have gone back to WWE, but he decided to plant his flag with AEW. Jon Moxley, who made the decision to come over to AEW from WWE. All of those guys are people that MJF put over. I can't think of anybody else from that first year that I would say to myself, wow, they really legitimized AEW. Or at least the first 2 years. To a degree, a lot of the people, except Miro, I think he quit. And I think Andrade quit. But Malachi Black was fired from WWE, so maybe that's who he's talking about. The guy who got fired. I mean, the other guys chose to quit. I think they just got lumped in with a bunch of other releases, but they had pretty much quit WWE at the time. They were frustrated with the creative. So I'm trying to figure out who is he talking about in this situation and why he needs to feel that these guys have to bow down to the originals, or at least pay homage to the originals. It's like these guys, just because you were there first, you had the opportunity to be there first. That was it. You could not get signed, and you just happened to be there when the upstart company started. So good on you. I mean, are we supposed to look at guys from the first year of TNA and think that those guys really added something to the, like Sonny Siaki and all these guys? Are you supposed to pretend that these people, David Young, like they did something significant for the wrestling business? It's like, no, you were a low card guy on TNA when it started. You were available. Now the guys who really did something for the company are the people who had a choice, the people who had the option to go somewhere else or to be signed somewhere else and made the decision to choose TNA, or in this instance AEW, which is why I say Chris Jericho and Danielson and Adam Cole. These guys had options. They could have gone or stayed with WWE. They made the decision to go to AEW. Some of these guys didn't have a choice because they got fired. Other people didn't have a choice because they couldn't get a job in WWE in the first place. But, it stands to reason that AEW, they had some of their greatest successes after Vince McMahon blew up NXT and started really releasing a bunch of people. It stands to reason that AEW started having a lot of success, especially on in terms of television, because they started having an influx of talent that WWE was finally starting to release people. So now they can do the big reveals, they can do the big returns and all this kind of stuff. And of course they captured CM Punk during that time. But I'm trying to figure out, who is he trying to sneak this? And I'm seeing nothing. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm bringing this to you guys. Let me know who you think he could possibly be talking about in terms of guys who came over from WWE who don't appreciate AEW. And it's like, there's quite a few guys who have left AEW, a few, and I don't see them as being guys that had any buzz or any people that anybody cared about. Shawn Spears? No. Kazarian? No. Kazarian was in WWE for a cup of coffee, and that was 20 goddamn years ago. It wasn't even recently. So there's just so many individuals who had come and gone from AEW. I just don't see them in this man a useful thing. And why would you write something that could possibly be taken the wrong way and cause any kind of upheaval in your locker room at a time where you don't really need that? Now is not the time to be writing blind items when you're complaining about, the negative attention that AEW gets. And then you want to sit here and write blind items about people who didn't do the work and people who are being lazy and all this kind of stuff. Now is not the time, really. I know you're trying to rally the troops, but now is not the time. Before I go too far into this, I'm going to be talking about the fan base of AEW, which he talks about in a minute, and his Jewness, which we'll get into in a moment. Let's talk about MJF in general, though, because the general tone and tenor of this thing is that poor little MJF didn't have a job in AEW and was given a shot by Cody, and he came in and crushed it. And then it's like, wait a minute. Are we trying to do some revisionist history here? Because it felt to me like Cody held your hand like the first several months you were in the company. And then you were feuding with Moxley. And then Jericho held your hand for a year. And then CM Punk held your hand for almost a year. And now you're the world champion. It seems to me that you didn't really have, when you were feuded with lower card guys, they didn't do anything but stand there and get yelled at. I mean, this is what happened with Brian Pillman, right? He feuded with Brian Pillman. He got to sit there and call his mom a coke whore and all this kind of stuff. And Pillman just could not respond, was not given any opportunity to respond. And in the match got chewed up, spit out, and beat in his hometown. I mean, it seems to me that you had quite a bit of help, MJF. We're supposed to believe that you sank and swim on your own. It's like, really? Did you? I don't know. Maybe I'm being cynical. Feel free to let me know. But I'm thinking that MJF was basically being groomed by even getting the opportunity to work with Cody and CM Punk and Chris Jericho and John Moxley, because there's guys on that roster that have been on that roster for a long time that did not have that opportunity. He didn't get that chance at all. And it ain't because they can't talk. It's because Tony won't give it to them. You got guys like Powerhouse Hobbs and guys like Wardlow on that goddamn roster and been on that roster for 2 years. More than 2 years. And they haven't gotten shit. They haven't gotten anything. Are we supposed to believe just because they can't cut promos? Because it's like, they're not over? Okay, what are you doing to get them over? What about Takeshita right now? MJF is trying to create his own The Rock $7 story. I only had $7 in my pocket. Or another Hulk Hogan. I wasn't sure that Andre was going to go for the Slam Brother. It's like, come on. Everybody from the beginning could see that MJF was going to be dragged. Just like they saw that Darby Allin was going to get dragged along. They weren't going to let you fall behind. Look at what they're doing with Sammy Guevara. That's why they named you guys the 4 pillars. They were not going to let you fail. You were the 4 guys that they wanted to make stars. You were handpicked, you 4 guys, to be stars. You didn't have a lot of competition, by the way. Looking at the rest of the roster, you didn't have a lot of competition in 2019. It wasn't like Jimmy Havoc was going to take your spot. Oh, yeah, man, it was tough. They made me sink or swim, brother. It's like, yeah, and you look at the roster and it's Brandon Cutler and Michael Nakazawa and Joey Janela. Like, oh, these guys are supposed to be the guys that you were concerned with in terms of competition. And then when other people came in, basically they just grabbed your hand and walked you along. I mean, look, the last several months he's been working with Adam Cole has been the most over stuff that he's done. Since MJF has been on his own, this thing's flopped like a catfish pulled straight out of the river. Come on, don't give me that. I had to sink or swim. I had to do it all on my own. Get out of here with that bullshit. Now, of all the things that he's said in this thing, this one raised my eyebrow the most because it's so incorrect. He says this about the AEW fans. They're smart. They're passionate. And simply put, they love this shit. And I don't mean love as in blind loyalty or love as in marked behavior, but love as in love. Love as in embracing our best stuff. Then he gives a list of things that the AEW fans like, such as Swerve and Hangman's deathmatch, Darby stunts, Eddie Kingston's promos, Timeless Tony Storm, Jamie Hayter's wrestling, a bunch of his own stuff. But he says, but also love as in holding us accountable. When there's too much of something or where there isn't enough, like he mentions Swerve, he says, or when we forget what we're supposed to be about. I'm sure people will roll their eyes at this, but I don't care. I grew up as a fan. I'm still a fan. AEW only works because of our fans. I'm also aware that there's a contingent of fans who are frustrated with me right now. And you know what? Those sick fucks are still the best. They didn't magically wake up and go from loving me to hating me. It happened because they hold me to a highest standard. And I'm glad I'm held to that standard. I hold them to the same. If I'm ever missing the mark, I want to know. And I want them to know when I miss the mark. The next time I'm out there, I'm going to hit the living piss out of it. And that for as long as I'm in this company, I will give them my all. So what's my problem with this paragraph? My problem with this paragraph is he says, and I don't mean love as in blind loyalty, which is exactly what the AEW fan base has. They have had this for 5 years. 5 years. You've had some of the worst matches of all time. Some of the worst events. Some of the worst wrestling ever put on American television have come out of AEW. And you've had fans, mostly people who are on the internet, dirt sheet guys and stuff like this, cage match raiders and all that crap, running and saying it's the greatest match of all time. If they have a good match, it's the greatest match of all time. If they have a shitty match, it is better than Raw, at least. You know, there is tons of blind loyalty in AEW. There's tons of marked behavior. There was people trying to convince you and me, rational people, that people like Joey Janela is good. That somebody like Big Swole is good. Crazily enough, it wasn't until they released her that Tony Khan came out and said, oh, Big Swole is just not good enough. They tried to convince you and me that Shawn Spears is good and is a top-level wrestler. They tried to convince us that Christopher Daniels wasn't some washed idiot while he was running around botching moonsaults in AEW on television. They tried to convince us that Scorpio Sky was good. They tried to convince us that the Butcher and the Blade are people worth spending your time on. I'm talking about their fans, brother. Now they running around here trying to act like Ali was a draw. Like Riho is a draw and that they matter on television. But there's no blind loyalty when it comes to AEW. They hold you to a higher standard. Maybe they do. Maybe they hold you to a higher standard. They don't hold that company to a higher standard. Oh, no, they don't. They hold AEW to a very low standard. Super low standard. I'm saying one of the lowest standards. Because if you didn't lose fans after that tooth and nail thing, if everybody didn't promptly get up and walk out after that, you had them forever. I mean, there's some of the craziest, kookiest, dumbest things that have ever happened on television. And they only had 5 years. And they crammed that 5 years full of some really bad stuff. And some really dumb shit. All right. Now, granted, they didn't have the roster. They didn't have the talent roster. A lot of it was terrible because of that. But you had these people watching AEW Dark every week to watch Sonny Kiss twerk and some guy with lube rub lube all over himself and slide off of people's backs. And then tell you that it was a great show. You had people actually their fans are like Jehovah's Witnesses, knocking on every wrestling fan's door. Can I tell you about the glory of AEW Dark? They're the worst fans in the business, dog. They're worse than any college football. I've seen some really annoying college football fans, bro. They're worse than that. I've seen people who are fans of like Star Wars and they're super geeky and everything reminds them of Star Wars. And nah, those people might be annoying. They ain't got nothing on the AEW fan base. You will see Christians criticize the Bible before you see some of these people criticize Dynamite. And it's only been the last few months where you started seeing a lot of criticism of Dynamite and Collision and Rampage, etc. There's people who still watch Rampage and talk about how great it is. Just a couple of weeks ago, somebody did a synchronized swimming spot or some shit like that on Rampage. I think it might have been some kind of 6-man tag. It was like Top Flight and a bunch of luchadors. And they did a 6-person kick to the head spot where everybody jumped up at the same time, kicked at the same time, took the bump at the same time. It was clipped and everybody was talking about how great it was. Like, dude, you are retarded. All right. If you think that's pro wrestling, you are functionally retarded. And I don't know what more to say. And that's the AEW fan base. And these are the people he loves. I understand why you love them because they're paying you. That's why you love them. But they're retarded and you know it. You know, you just can't say that because it's uncouth to say that, but I'm going to say it. A lot of them are fucking retards. If you're an AEW fan, don't be offended. Because I'm not saying you, but a lot of your cohorts, retarded. All right? Straight up and down. I don't know what more to say. But let's move on. Because he wants to talk about being a Jew again. Not that I have a problem with that, but I am kind of tired of it. So here's what he had to say. People are always telling me Long Island's a part of my character. Nope, fuck you, it's home. I'm a short kid with learning disabilities from Long Island, not a character. People are always telling me how being bullied is a part of my backstory. Nope, fuck you, it happened. Kids threw quarters at me and told me to pick it up, Jew boy, not a backstory. And he says, sometimes I wonder if standing up to anti-Semitism would be even a babyface move anymore. No, for real, I legit wonder. I wonder if being a proud Jew like I am in 2023 has actually made me less popular as a wrestler. And if deep down, when someone says they have MJF fatigue, what they really mean is enough with the Jewish stuff already. I honestly don't know the answer to that, and I'm sure I'll get shit for even asking the question, but that's where my thoughts are right now. It's fear the worst. I'm a Jew in America, and I'm fucking soul sick. Well, for starters, let's talk about that last line. Because as a Jew, you are safer nowhere else than in the United States. So get off that, all right? If you think you're safer anywhere else in the world, you need to get there. If you're a Jew in the United States, you're in a mother in her baby's arms. Don't give me that Jew shit about being in the U.S. You probably had some bad experiences because everybody does. Everybody who's a minority has a bad experience. But overall, no, you're very safe as a Jew in the United States. Now, he says he wonders if talking about being a Jew has made him less popular. Now, this is where I actually side with MJF, because that has been my experience in terms of seeing people online. The more he talks about being Jewish right now, specifically during the Palestinian thing, has made people turn against him. That part is true. That part is a fact. I've seen a lot of people who have started attacking him, specifically for the next paragraph that we're going to talk about here, about him being Jewish. And he says, quote, "Allow me to say this straight up, point blank. I don't support terrorism, Zionism, genocide, war, bombs, genocidal governments, dead innocent Palestinians, dead innocent Israelis. I don't support any people dying because of hate. I'll tell you what I do support, and what I definitely am. I'm anti-hate. I'm sick to my stomach that people are calling for the death of Jews over something that's happening on the other side of the world. And I'm sick of that Hamas, a literal terrorist organization, has fans on this side of the world. As on a daily basis, I'm having to read anti-Semitic shit from all kinds of people, celebrities, strangers, even people I know. It's just very sad. We're all human, man. We all deserve rights. We all deserve freedom. We all deserve happiness and respect. I really wanted to clarify these things, and I hope I have. These are the very serious conversations I had with my very hot woman I'm in love with, who, by the way, is Palestinian." He got destroyed for this paragraph. There's a lot of people mad at him for this paragraph. Why are they mad? Well, for starters, they're mad that he criticized Hamas, which is a literal terrorist organization. So, got to get over it when it comes to that. They supported attacking people who were at parties in October. That's literally terrorism, all right? There's just no two ways about it. He is living in a world right now where people are fashionably saying negative things about Jews, which is true. You know, it's very fashionable right now for people to attack Israelis and attack Judaism and attack Jews in colleges, and we've seen the videos. Yes, it is very fashionable right now to do that. You're still on the safest place in the world, but it is very fashionable right now for people to attack Jews. But this is how it was always going to be when you're dealing with commies. Commies work off of resentment and jealousy, and Jews have a stereotype, especially in the media, especially in Hollywood, of being a 2% of the population, but dominating the media, dominating Hollywood, etc. So there was always going to be that resentment, that hatred. When you foment that kind of stuff with socialists and commies, they always going to end up hating Jews in the end anyway. It's baked into the cake. That's why they're going to eventually start hating Asians too, which they do, and Indians. People who persevere despite having negative experiences, they're going to absolutely hate you. So this was baked into the cake. Sorry this is happening to you, brother. Eventually it'll blow over and they'll go back to hating regular anglicized white people, just, random Englishmen and Australians and Irish. So they go back to hating regular white people eventually. But right now, the Israelis and the terrorists are at war, and people are siding with terrorists. That's very unfortunate. But yeah, I feel what he's saying on that, because he is going to wake up every day with people talking about, killing Jews or whatever, because it's fashionable to do right now, and they can get away with it because they have created a system. And by they, I mean the political class. They have created a system where it's okay to punch up. And if they consider you, quote unquote, up, they will punch up. And Jews are up because they typically make more money. And Israel is a Jewish country. So yeah, they're going to attack you specifically. That's what it is right now. So another part of this thing that got him in a lot of hot water was him saying basically that Alicia Atut is Palestinian. So people are like, oh, you think because you're banging a Palestinian chick that makes you on the side of the Palestinians, that you support their country, that you support. He's like, he blatantly just told you he don't support Hamas. He's not going to want the terrorists to win, no matter who he's banging. But his idea that he is a Jew banging a Palestinian chick, it's almost like Cody saves racism all over again. He's just like his buddy Cody. Cody bangs a black chick, all of a sudden racism solved. I figured it out, bros. All of you got to do is sex them out. We're gonna do what the French try to do to the British. We're gonna try to breed them out. We gonna have sex with all their women. We're gonna have babies with them, mix the blood up, and eventually they'll be gone. That's not how this works, fam. That was funny. Those people that doesn't work. They don't care about you being in a mixed race relationship or whatever the hell you want to call it. They don't like you, and they don't like that you just tried that. They're very upset about that. So here's the last thing, and this is the last thing we're going to cover. He says, here's the last thing I will say about my Jewness. If you're over it, tough shit. If you feel like it's a political statement, I can't help you. If it makes you uncomfortable, good. I'm glad. If you think I should tone it down, no, I won't. If you hate me for other reasons, yeah, that's fair. So he's going to apparently continue to crow about being a Jew. And it's like, I don't get this. I don't understand this, man. Like, why make this thing your whole personality? Why is this the hill to die on? You went 4 years being a Jewish wrestler that people liked, that people were interested in, that didn't feel the need to walk around like little drummer boy yelling about how he's a Jew. And now you don't want to shut the fuck up about being a Jew, like, ever? See, I feel like this about black people, too. It's like, okay, you are who you are. You can't help who you are. I mean, you can't change it. But do we have to talk about this incessantly? Can we literally talk about anything else going on in the world? Who's your favorite basketball team, for fuck's sake? I don't want to sit here and talk about your Judaism all day. I really don't. I don't talk about being black that much. I mention it here and there when relevant. I don't like the idea of the navel gazing that we get from this kind of political pandering. It's an obsession almost. And it's like, have you done anything in the world that separates you from that? And that's where I strive to be every single day. I strive to say, I've done shit so that you just can't whittle me down to just being black. Yeah, I want to be more than that. Sorry, if that's, the base functioning of my biology is not, I don't want to stop there. I don't want to just stop at being a man. I want to be a man that does something. He wants to be a great pro wrestler. That's great. You can do that and be Jewish. Goldberg didn't walk around screaming about how he was Jewish all the time. He's not the only Jewish wrestler either that has ever won a world title. Raven was Jewish, and he was ECW world champion, and that was a long time ago. There's tons of Jewish wrestlers that have been top stars, world champions. Why do we feel the need to act as if MJF is the first and only one and he has to carry the flag? No, he doesn't. I don't understand why he thinks he does. Who got in his ear and made him think that this is absolutely, positively a necessity for your career? Because I promise you it's not. I just wish that he would go back to being sort of a fun character. I don't know if it's political. Hopefully it's not. But it is annoying. It's very annoying. It's very fucking annoying. And I'm over it. He's talking directly to me. I feel seen, as the hood rats say. Anyway, thanks for your time. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
MongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, Daddy.